Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh to our respected panels and supervisor. So in this video, we are going to present our research topic entitled The Financial Aids and Wellbeing of B40 Group, a case of Bantuan Keluarga Malaysia from Capability Approach. Throughout this research, we have been supervised by Dr. Nur Ardyanti Ahmad. Before we go into deeper explanation, allow me to introduce myself, Muhammad Zulhilmi bin Muhammad Azuhri, along with my research partner, Nur Afiq Bin Ashari. We are both from KAM 22860. We will start our presentation by enlightening the background of presentation. Malaysia is one of the countries that practicing cash handout transfer as a financial aid to its people. Lagarde, Hayes and Palmer 2009 had defined the cash transfer as the provision of cash assistance to increase the household income. In Malaysia, everyone, Bantuan Rakyat Satu Malaysia or BRIM was the first cash benefit that has been established and nationally proclaimed on that time. Meanwhile, Bantuan Keluarga Malaysia or BKM was the new initiative of cash transfer from government to low income group or B40 group. It was introduced during the premiership of Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob, the ninth Prime Minister of Malaysia. The BKM initiative are aimed to reduce the household cost of living that are burdened with huge expenses and high cost of living. However, the amount of financial aid given to the low-income group from urban and rural areas are similar, irrespective of their cost of living in both areas. Thus, this will give some impact towards the well-being and standard of living of low-income group. Next, we're moving on to problem statement. First, there are allegations that BKM is still out of reach for a large portion of the intended audience. For those in the low and medium income brackets who want to maintain their present level of consumption during the current period of high living expenses, the implementation of direct cash transfer is preferable, according to Lu and Harun 2020. Second, some opponents claim that BKM have little effect on poverty and inequality. Due to the limited resources required, the impacts of poverty are minimal, and even with precise targeting, it is challenging to achieve 100% coverage among the low-income group, according to Amaranth and Brown 2018. Third, the benefits of the financial aid may not be the same for people from urban and rural areas. It is well known that the cost of living in both areas is different, and people from urban areas may have a high cost of living as compared to the people from rural areas, according to World Bank 2020. So, the financial aid given may be slightly beneficial to people from urban areas as compared to rural areas. Therefore, researchers intended to explore how and in what ways the financial aid provided by the government improve the well-being of B40 group in both urban and rural areas. Next, for research questions or RQ. For RQ, questions are developed to find the purpose of this study and to identify what are the implications of financial aid given by the government to low-income group based on the SAN perspective. Therefore, 3 research questions have been developed for this study. First, why did the government introduce financial aid such as the BKM? Secondly, how did the financial aid recipients understood the aim of the financial aid or BKM? And the last is how far did the financial aid improve the standard of living of the recipients? Moving on to research objective or RO. For RO, objective may provide the information to the researcher on the implication of financial aid or BKM given by the government to low-income group. Firstly, to examine this reason for the introduction of the BKM as financial aid assistance to low-income group. Second, to study the understanding of the BKM recipient on the financial assistance that provided by the government. And lastly, to explore on the capability and well-being of the low-income groups.
Next, we move to the other part on the conceptual framework. As we can see, the illustrated conceptual framework conveys the financial aid received by B40 groups, which determined by 3 influence of conversion factor, which personal, social and environmental conversion factor. This conversion factor was taken and influenced by the Ahmad capability theory approach on the capability of B40 group in rural and urban areas of financial aid. The capability of financial assistance to an individual can be seen as it can reduce the financial burden, which being a pressure toward their standard of living. Social convention factors, the capability financial aid can be able to evaluate the equity of social structures in identifying the capability essential for the appropriate quality of life. Meanwhile, the environmental convention factor can be observed through the surplus of low-income financial. Next, we move to our research methodologies, which our research method that we use in this study is qualitative research in order to analyze and acquire insight into the experience of the B40 groups and the connection between people well-being in individual, social and environmental factors. Under unit of analysis is crucial because helps the research to justify what was being investigated from the element being studied. Besides, the unit of analysis will be an individual of B40 from Sungai Petani and Merbok. On sample size, the sampling was taking place in Merbok and Sungai Petani, where the population is in this area is big, with the total population about 352,058, and it was 70% total population in Kedah. Next, the purposive sampling technique used by the researchers known as the process to systematically pick a selection the person that helped researchers to develop the sample under discussion. It also enabled to choose respondents from both areas, which brought better understanding from the conducted interviews. The interview question was set up in semi-structured interviews, which most popular in qualitative research. It enabled to collect the research without put the limitation on respondent. For the data collection, the qualitative method on the data collection will not involve any numbers of mathematical calculation, but it will be more toward feelings and other elements. It helps the researchers be more detailed toward the level of understanding, as it will include interview questionnaire with open-ended question and so on. The data analysis will be conducted through VIVA 12 software, which is suitable for qualitative data to be analyzed and organized in various unorganized documents. After all the data has been gathered, analysis of the data will begin with the goal of achieve the research objectives. The research objectives, one was on what the reason of BKM as financial assistance program for the B40 group by the government. The researcher found three main themes, which financial burden, reduce expenses and reduce cost of living. Based on the finding theme 1, which reduce financial burden, it can be defined as the person was struggling in encounter the non-refundable payment income. As an example, the respondent 1 stated financial aid helped her reduce her burden as she can buy more regular goods like rice, flour and so on. Next, we move to theme 2, which from the research objective 1, reduce expense. It can be clarified as the cost spent on something in order to get revenue. Due to the B40 group that have the small business to survive, they need to continue to spend the financial aid given by the government, and the respondent 6 was running the small business and financial aid reduced his financial expenses that can help the people's condition like her.
Next, for the third themes under this research objective is reduce cost of living. There are three respondents, which is respondent 1, 6 and 9 have mentioned on why the financial aid are being introduced to low income group. Taking the example of respondent 1, he have mentioned that how financial aids are able to reduce the cost of living, especially when people are suffered with high price of goods nowadays. Next, for the second research objective, to study the BKM recipient on the financial assistance provided by the government. The research question aimed to find any related justifications or ideas from low income of B40 groups from the definition of the BKM given by the government. The first thing for this RO is financial loan. From the interview, there are several respondents that have described the financial loan is part of financial aid by government. For example, respondent 11 have mentioned that she considered the Tekun business loan as one of the financial aid that have been received by her to run her business. Next, for the second theme, which is support of income. There are some respondents have stated that financial aid is one of the support of the main income, and some of them saying that financial aid was not sufficient to support their income. For example, respondent 8 state that financial aid such as BRIN or BKM are not adequate to support his insufficient income. Meanwhile, the respondent 18 has mentioned that BKM is a bit sufficient as it can support his main income to raise his big family size. Next, for the third theme, which is government support. Some of respondents interviewed have mentioned on how financial aids can be understood as government assistance for lower income group. For example, respondent 18 had mentioned on how financial aid is one of the government support, especially for the people that have low in education and does not have a good occupation like him.
The research question 3 aimed to find the improvisation in the standard of living among B40 groups. This aligned with the theory of capability that emphasized the individual well-being and advocates social change. Based on the findings, there were several themes which consist of personal, social and environment factors. The first theme was self-relief, which part of human behavior that enable to feel calm after get past any crisis in their life. For example, the respondent 15 felt more relief after received financial aid from government which helped her to buy the school equipment for her children. We move to the second theme, which the accessibility of good. It was all about the capability in buying the basic needs for household if there any adequate of amount. Through the sufficient amount of financial aid given, the respondent 2 who live in urban areas stated the financial aid helps to buy the groceries for the household as the cost and price of groceries in that area was high and increased. Next, the theme 3 was diminish the economic stress. It can be clarified as the economic stress was influenced by the stressful environment which the capability of individual to have the quality of life in difficult way. Besides, the employment instability and economic deficiency stressed by certain respondents such as respondent 14, which by the help of financial aids reduce his stress to an unstable of global economy instead of reduce the expenses.
Next, the researchers are intend to propose some recommendation based on the study that have been carried out. First, the policymaker needs to review the rate and amount of financial aid that given by the government to the low-income group. This is because the current amount of financial aid such as BKM are not sufficient, especially for B40 groups due to increasing cost of living and goods. Next, we are also proposing for government to address the financial aid based on the locality and geographical demography. Based on the finding, the researcher have found that the cost of living in urban area is higher compared to rural area. However, everyone, the financial aid that have been channeled are same and does not have differences. In overcome this unbalanced situation, government shall look into consideration of giving the financial aid based on the locality and geographical location to ensure this justice among the lower income group can be achieved.
Therefore, we move to research limitation, which there are few limitations that have been recognized and identified for the purpose of learning and improvement for the future. The first limitation occurred where some respondents are willing to respond some questions asked by researchers as the data collection was made during general election campaign that involved local people in political campaign. Thus, the question related political and privacy life may not bring comfortable for the respondent to answer as some of them were strong supporters to their political party. Next, the other limitation occurred was the data collection not covering all areas in Kedah. It was impossible for the researchers in conducting the face-to-face interview session. Moreover, there are many districts in Kedah which allocated a higher proportion of poor people and B40 groups. For example, the other districts like Baling, Sik and Kubang Pasu which also consist of higher B40 groups.
As a conclusion, this study resulted on how the B40 people of Sungai Petani and Merbok were able to understand and fully utilize the financial aid given by government in right way. All chapters also have been clarified on how the financial aid given by government for the lower income group are capable to achieve the quality of life by fulfill their basic needs.